The phone call came just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. "Mrs. Carter?" a man's voice asked, calm but uncertain. "I believe I may have something that belongs to your family." I remember standing there in my quiet kitchen, the kettle still hissing softly on the stove, sunlight stretching across the worn oak table. My first instinct was confusion. People don't usually call you out of the blue to return something, especially something they've already paid for. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "Who is this?" "My name is Daniel Brooks," he replied. "I bought a watch yesterday from a young man named Ryan Carter." My heart dropped in a way I can't quite explain. Ryan Carter, my son. "And?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. There was a pause on the other end, a thoughtful pause, the kind people take when they know what they're about to say might hurt. "It looked important," he said. "Engraved. I thought maybe you should know." I felt the mug slip slightly in my hand, because there was only one watch in our family that had an engraving, my husband's watch, the one he wore every single day for 22 years before cancer took him away. Before that moment, life had been quiet. Not perfect, but steady. "My name is Linda Carter. I'm 56 years old, and I've lived in the same small Ohio town most of my life. The kind of place where the grocery store cashier knows your birthday and the mailman waves from 3 houses down. My husband, Mark, was the center of our little world. He worked as a mechanic at Turner's Auto Shop, and though his hands were always stained with grease, he carried himself with a quiet dignity that made everyone respect him. Mark wasn't a man of many possessions, but the things he had, he valued deeply. And the watch, well, the watch was special. It was a simple silver wristwatch his father gave him when he turned 30. Nothing flashy, no diamonds or gold, just clean lines and a leather strap that had softened with age. On the back, there was a small engraving. "Time is the only thing we never get back. Use it well, Dad." Mark wore it every day, at work, at dinner, even when he mowed the lawn. And when he got sick, when we started spending long days in hospital rooms with pale walls and quiet machines, that watch kept ticking beside his bed like a stubborn little heartbeat. A week before he passed, he took it off and held it in his palm. Ryan was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed that day, trying very hard not to cry. "Son," Mark said softly, placing the watch into Ryan's hand. "Take care of this for me." Ryan nodded, his jaw tight, his eyes red. "I will, Dad." That was 3 years ago, and until that phone call, I believed he had kept that promise. Ryan is 22 now. He's always been a good kid, a little impulsive maybe, a little too eager to chase excitement, but never cruel, never careless with things that mattered. At least, that's what I thought. He was living at home while finishing community college and working part-time at a sporting goods store. Most evenings, he'd come through the front door smelling like cheap cologne in the outside air, dropping his keys on the kitchen counter. "Hey, Mom," he'd say, opening the fridge like he hadn't eaten in days. I used to tease him that growing boys never stop being hungry, no matter how old they get. Lately, though, something had been different. A few weeks earlier, he'd mentioned going on a trip with friends. "Just a little vacation," he said casually one night over spaghetti. "Nothing crazy. Maybe Florida." I remember raising an eyebrow. "Florida isn't exactly cheap." Ryan shrugged and twirled pasta on his fork. "I've been saving." Maybe he had. But as I stood there in my quiet kitchen with Daniel Brooks still on the phone, something inside me began to connect the pieces. A vacation, money, and my husband's watch. My throat felt dry. "Mr. Brooks," I said slowly, "can you tell me exactly what watch you bought?" The man hesitated. Then he read the engraving, word for word. And in that moment, I knew. Ryan hadn't just lost his father's watch. He had sold it. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter as 1,000 questions rushed through my mind. Why would he do that? How could he do that? And the worst one of all, did he think I would never find out? On the other end of the phone, Daniel Brooks spoke again, gently. I had a feeling the story I was told might not be the whole truth. The kitchen clock ticked loudly on the wall, and for the first time since Mark died, I felt the fragile peace in our home begin to crack. For a few seconds after Mr. Brooks finished speaking, neither of us said anything. I could hear faint sounds through the phone, cars passing somewhere in the background, the distant hum of a city. Meanwhile, my kitchen felt painfully still, like the whole house had paused to listen. Finally, I cleared my throat. "Can you tell me where you bought it?" I asked. "A pawn shop outside Columbus," he said. The kid seemed nervous, but I figured maybe he just needed the money. The kid. My son. My stomach twisted. "Did he say why he was selling it?" I asked. Mr. Brooks hesitated again. "He said it belonged to his father," he replied slowly, "and that his father wouldn't mind." That sentence landed like a stone in my chest, because Mark would have minded. Not because of the watch itself. Mark had never been materialistic. If Ryan had needed help paying for school or rent, Mark would have handed that watch over himself without hesitation. But this was different. This was about the promise. "I appreciate you calling," I finally told the man. "You didn't have to." "Well," he said softly, the engraving stayed with me, and the way the kid looked when he sold it, something about it felt wrong. His honesty was almost comforting. "Do you still have the watch?" I asked carefully. "Yes." Another pause. "If it belongs with your family," he added, "I'd like to return it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My eyes drifted to the window above the sink, where the maple tree in our yard swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. 3 years. For 3 years, that watch had been the last physical piece of Mark we still carried, and my son had traded it for a vacation. "I'll pay you whatever you spent," I said quietly. "That won't be necessary," Mr. Brooks replied. But I insisted. Some things, I believe, should never come free. After we ended the call, I stayed in the kitchen for a long time. The coffee in my mug had gone cold. My mind kept replaying the moments in the hospital room when Mark had placed that watch into Ryan's hand. Ryan was 19 then, still young enough to look like a boy, but old enough to understand what that moment meant. Or so I believed. I walked slowly into the living room and sat in Mark's old recliner. The leather creaked the way it always had. Sometimes, when the house is quiet like that, I swear I can still hear the faint ticking of his watch echoing in my memory. Tick, tick, tick. Time is the only thing we never get back. Use it well. Mark's father had engraved those words decades earlier, but they felt heavier now. Had Ryan forgotten them, or had something else pushed him to ignore them? Ryan didn't come home until almost 6 that evening. I heard his car before I saw him, the familiar rattle of his old Honda pulling into the driveway. The front door opened with its usual squeak. "Mom?" he called out. "In the kitchen," I replied. I kept my voice steady, calm. Ryan walked in carrying a plastic grocery bag and humming under his breath. He looked normal, happy even. His brown hair was messy from the wind, and he was wearing that faded blue hoodie he'd had since high school. "Guess what?" he said, dropping the bag on the counter. "Flights are booked." My chest tightened. "Flights?" he asked. "For Florida," he said with a grin. "Next week." He opened the fridge and grabbed a soda like nothing in the world was wrong. I studied him carefully. "Sounds expensive," I said. Ryan shrugged. "Worth it." I waited. He didn't offer anything else. No explanation, no hesitation. Just the casual confidence of someone who thought the conversation was over. "Ryan," I said quietly. He glanced at me, taking a sip from the can. "Yeah? Where did the money come from?" He froze, just for a moment, but it was enough. His eyes flickered away from mine, drifting toward the window. "He told you, savings." His voice had changed. It was subtle, but a mother notices those things. The way his shoulder stiffened, the way he avoided looking directly at me. I folded my hands on the table. "Ryan," I said gently, "do you still have your father's watch?" The soda can stopped halfway to his mouth. Silence filled the kitchen. For a moment, I could actually see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Then he laughed, a short, awkward laugh. "Yeah, of course I do." And that's when I realized something that hurt more than the truth itself. My son wasn't just hiding something, he was lying to me. I didn't confront him that night, not yet. Instead, I nodded slowly and stood up from the table. "Well," I said softly, "that's good to hear." Ryan relaxed instantly. "Why wouldn't I?" he said with a shrug. I forced a small smile, but inside me, the questions were multiplying. Why lie? Why sell it? And what exactly had pushed my son to trade the last gift his father ever gave him for a week on a beach? As I washed the dinner dishes later that night, the ticking sound in my memory returned. Tick, tick, tick. Time reveals everything eventually. And I had a feeling the truth about that watch was only beginning to surface. That night, I barely slept. The house felt different somehow, like it was holding its breath. Ryan's bedroom was at the end of the hallway, the same room he'd grown up in. Posters still on the wall, a baseball glove sitting forgotten on the dresser. Around midnight, I heard him moving around in there, music playing softly through his phone. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds, but they felt heavier now. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's hand placing that watch into Ryan's palm, and Ryan promising to take care of it. By morning, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to accuse him again without proof, but I was going to find the truth. Ryan left early for work the next day. "Back around 4, he called out as he grabbed his keys. I nodded from the kitchen table. "Drive safe." The front door shut behind him and a quiet settled over the house. I waited about 10 minutes before standing up. Part of me felt guilty for what I was about to do. Mothers are supposed to trust their children, not investigate them like detectives. But something deeper told me this wasn't about trust anymore. It was about understanding. I walked slowly down the hallway toward Ryan's room. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The room smelled faintly of laundry detergent and the cologne he liked to wear, sharp and a little too strong. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the carpet. I stood there for a moment, remembering the boy who used to build Lego towers on that same floor. Then I started looking. Not rummaging, just looking. His dresser drawers held the usual things: t-shirts, socks, a tangle of phone chargers. His desk had scattered notebooks and a half-finished college assignment. Nothing unusual. Nothing that answered the question sitting heavy in my chest. Finally, my eyes drifted to the small wooden box on the shelf. I recognized it immediately. Mark had given it to him years ago to store small keepsakes, ticket stubs, old photographs, little memories boys sometimes keep hidden from the world. My heart beat faster as I lifted the lid. Inside were old movie tickets, a high school baseball pin, a folded photo of Ryan and Mark fishing at Lake Erie when Ryan was 12. But the watch wasn't there. I sat down slowly on the edge of his bed. For a moment, I hoped, truly hoped, that maybe Ryan had simply moved it somewhere else. Maybe a drawer. Maybe a backpack. Maybe he kept it with him. But deep down, I already knew the answer, because Mr. Brooks had read the engraving to me, word for word. Still, I kept searching. His backpack, his closet shelves, the small metal tin where he kept spare change. Nothing. The absence of that watch felt louder than any proof. When Ryan came home later that afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen table again, same place as the night before, same quiet room. But this time, I watched him more carefully. "Hey, Mom," he said, tossing his keys on the counter. I noticed something new in his voice. Excitement. "Jake just confirmed he's driving us to the airport. This trip is going to be amazing." Amazing. The word echoed strangely in my mind. "Ryan," I said gently. He opened the fridge again. "Yeah? Can I see your father's watch?" The fridge door stayed open. Cold air spilled into the kitchen. "Why?" he asked without turning around. "I just want to see it." A long pause followed. Then he shut the fridge slowly and faced me. His expression had changed. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even guilt. It was something closer to discomfort, like someone caught standing too close to a line they shouldn't cross. "I, don't have it with me right now." "Where is it?" Another pause. "At a repair shop." My stomach tightened. "A repair shop?" "Yeah," he said quickly. "The strap broke. I dropped it off yesterday." The lie came smoother this time. Too smooth. I studied his face for a long moment. "Which repair shop?" I asked calmly. Ryan blinked. "What?" "Which repair shop?" I repeated calmly. He scratched the back of his neck. "I don't remember the name." Of course he didn't. Something quiet inside me shifted then. Not anger, not yet, just the heavy realization that the boy I raised was digging himself deeper into a hole he didn't seem to understand. I nodded slowly. "Well, I'm glad you're taking care of it." Ryan relaxed again, visibly relieved. "Yeah, of course." But as he walked toward the hallway, I noticed something else. His shoulders looked tense, his steps slightly quicker than usual, like someone hoping the conversation was finished. And in a way, it was, because by that moment, I had already made another decision. If my son wouldn't tell me the truth, then someone else would. That evening, after Ryan went upstairs, I picked up my phone again. I scrolled to the number Daniel Brooks had given me earlier that day. My finger hovered over the call button. Part of me still hoped this was all some misunderstanding, but another part, the part that had listened to Ryan lie twice now, knew better. I pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice. Then Mr. Brooks answered, and the conversation we had next would change everything I believed about my son. "Mrs. Carter?" Daniel Brooks's voice came over the line, careful. "I wasn't sure you'd call back." "I had to," I said softly, my hands gripping the kitchen counter so tightly my knuckles ached. "I need to know the truth. Did he sell the watch to you?" "Yes," he admitted. There was no hesitation this time. "He brought it in yesterday morning. Looked nervous, like he knew it was important. He didn't give me many details, just said he needed some quick cash." The room went silent around me. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, even the faint breeze through the window felt louder, sharper, as if the house itself had noticed my world tilting. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would he do that?" Daniel's voice softened. "He said it was for a vacation, Florida, I think. He seemed desperate. He didn't want to tell you. That much I could tell." I sank into the chair, my chest tightening as though someone had pressed against it with their hands. Desperate. My son. My boy. The same boy who had clutched that watch in the hospital, promising to take care of it forever, had sold it behind my back. I wanted to scream, to run upstairs and shake him, to demand answers. But instead, I stayed still. My mind raced, piecing together the signs I had ignored, the sudden excitement about the trip, the "I've been saving" excuse, the nervous twitch when I asked about money. All of it made sense now, in the cruelest way. "Do you still have it?" I asked Daniel. "Yes," he said, "and I'd like to return it to your family. I think it belongs where it came from." I took a deep breath, holding back a flood of tears. "Thank you," I whispered. "Please, I'll come get it." When I hung up, I waited for Ryan to come home. I didn't need to prepare words. They would come naturally. I only needed him to face the truth. He arrived later, backpack slung over his shoulder, a grin plastered across his face. "Mom, guess what?" I held up the phone with Daniel's number still on the screen. Ryan's smile faltered immediately. "Mom, what?" "Ryan," I said quietly. Did you sell your father's watch? He froze. His brown eyes, usually so warm, darted to the floor. The air between us grew heavy, dense with something unspoken yet undeniable. I could see his shame creeping across his features, slow but unstoppable. I needed the money, he admitted, voice low. It's just for the trip. I didn't think it would. You didn't think it would matter? I interrupted, my voice steady, almost detached. This watch wasn't just any object. It was your father's, his memory, the last piece of him you were entrusted with. He swallowed hard, words failing him. I could see the conflict in his body, the way his shoulders sagged, the way he avoided my eyes, and yet he couldn't take it back. I know, he finally whispered. I know it was wrong. I didn't think. I held up my hand. I don't want excuses. I want honesty. You lied to me twice today. You brought it to a stranger and sold it, and you didn't even have the courage to tell me. The tears came then, silently, streaming down my face as I tried to catch my breath. I had to remind myself to stay calm, to keep my dignity, to let him understand the gravity of what he'd done without destroying him entirely. I'm sorry, he muttered, voice cracking. I didn't think. Not thinking isn't an excuse, Ryan. This wasn't just money, it was trust, and you broke it. He sank into the chair across from me, hands shaking, eyes red. I could see his regret eating at him, and it hurt me more than anger ever could. My son, my own flesh and blood, had chosen a moment of selfishness over a memory that mattered more than anything. I can get it back, he said finally. I'll pay you back. You can't, I said softly. It's already out there. But what matters now is that you understand why this hurt so much, and that you never, ever do something like this again. Ryan nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks. I get it, Mom. I really do. I'm so sorry. We sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that carries weight, that forces reflection. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast, left over from breakfast I had forgotten in the shock. The afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, falling in stripes across the table. Every tick of the clock felt like a heartbeat marking a lesson learned. And in that silence, I realized something I hadn't expected. Anger was temporary. Disappointment lingered. But love always found its way through the cracks. The house felt heavy after that. Not with anger exactly, but with all the words that had been spoken and those that remained unspoken. I spent the evening in the living room, staring at the muted TV, but seeing nothing. The watch sat on the coffee table beside me, silver gleaming in the lamplight. I picked it up every few minutes, turning it over in my hands, tracing the engraving. Time is the only thing we never get back. Use it well. Mark's words, echoing in my mind louder than ever. I realized that confronting Ryan once wasn't enough. He needed to truly understand, not just feel guilt, but comprehend the impact of what he'd done. The next morning, I called him into the kitchen. He came, hair still messy from sleep, hoodie half unzipped. The boy who had laughed and shrugged the night before now looked small, unsure. Ryan, I began calmly, keeping my voice steady. We need to talk about this trip. His eyes widened. He had been ready to leave for work without fully processing the previous day. It's not just the money, it's the choices. You sold something that carried more than just monetary value. You sold trust. You sold memory. And then you lied. He nodded silently, chewing on the inside of his cheek. I could see him replaying every moment in his head. The pawn shop, the conversation with Mr. Brooks, my questions. I want you to do something, Not as punishment, not as revenge, but so you understand responsibility. You're going to call Mr. Brooks and thank him. You're going to tell him everything, why you did it, what it meant, and that you're sorry. And then you're going to start figuring out how to make things right with me, with the family, and with yourself. He swallowed hard. Okay, I'll do it. I handed him the phone number. He took it, hesitated, then called. I watched from the kitchen table as he stumbled over his words at first, ashamed and embarrassed. Then gradually, as he admitted the truth, his voice steadied. By the time he hung up, I could see a shift. Relief mingled with newfound understanding softened the lines of guilt on his face. Afterward, I asked him to sit. This doesn't erase what happened. You need to prove you've learned from it. He nodded again, determination in his eyes this time. I'll work extra hours, he said quietly. I'll save every penny. I'll never do anything like this again. It wasn't a punishment in the traditional sense. I didn't ground him or ban him from going on the trip. I didn't scream or rage. That wasn't the lesson I wanted him to learn. Instead, I gave him accountability, responsibility, something that weighed more than money ever could. I felt a small sense of pride, mixed with sadness, yes, but mostly hope. My son had made a terrible mistake, yes, but he was also facing it, and that's more than many people do. Over the next few days, I noticed changes in Ryan. He was quieter, thoughtful, and less distracted by the usual rush of friends and social media. He spent hours at the sporting goods store working extra shifts without complaint. He helped more around the house, doing dishes and laundry without being asked. The house, which had felt fractured, slowly began to feel whole again. He also spoke to me differently, not with the casual indifference of a 22-year-old, but with genuine care, a cautious but sincere effort to rebuild trust. One evening, we sat together on the porch, the sky painted orange and pink by the setting sun. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and early summer blooms. I understand now, Mom, he said quietly. I didn't think about what it meant. I thought I just needed the money. I didn't see the bigger picture. I nodded. Sometimes we need to stumble before we see. You can't undo the past, but you can learn. You can choose to be better. He stayed silent for a while, watching the horizon. Then he said, I promise I will be better. I want to be better. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Mistakes don't define a person. How we respond to them does. Later that week, Mr. Brooks stopped by to return the watch formally. I invited Ryan to meet him in person. Watching my son stand there, shaking hands and thanking a stranger for returning something precious, I felt a mix of pride and relief. The honesty, the humility, the courage, it was something I hadn't expected to see so soon. The watch went back into its box, placed safely in my bedroom drawer. Ryan watched me carefully, almost reverently, and I could see he understood the weight it carried, not just silver and leather, but memory, love, and a promise kept. That night, the house felt lighter. Not perfect, not fixed completely, but the tension that had gripped us for days had lifted slightly, and I knew this was the first step towards something stronger, a trust rebuilt, slowly but surely. Word travels fast in a small town like ours. By the time Friday rolled around, the story of Ryan's reckless choice had started to ripple quietly among neighbors and family friends. Not maliciously, at least not initially, but with that inevitable human curiosity that comes when someone betrays trust. It started at the grocery store. I was standing in line, slowly weighing produce, when Mrs. Whitaker, from 2 blocks over, leaned in and whispered, I heard about that watch. Are you okay? I forced a polite smile. Yes, thank you. It's all sorted now. Her eyes lingered, sympathetic but curious, as if she wanted the full story. and part of me realized maybe I needed to tell it, not as gossip, but as a caution. Later that afternoon, my sister, Elaine, called. She'd heard from someone at the diner. Her tone was worried, not judgmental. "Linda, I know it's hard, but Ryan needs to face the consequences beyond our walls. Sometimes people learn faster when the whole world sees what they did." I knew she was right, not to shame him, but to help him internalize the weight of his actions. So, that evening, we had a family dinner, just the two of us and a few close relatives. I gently brought up the situation, not dramatizing, not scolding, but explaining it exactly as it had happened. Ryan spoke too. His voice was quieter than usual, but honest. He recounted the trip, the watch, the panic he felt when he realized he'd crossed a line. He told everyone how Mr. Brooks had returned it and how deeply sorry he was. I watched my son stand in front of our family, admitting his mistake openly. There was a trembling vulnerability in him, a raw honesty that was difficult to watch, and yet it was exactly what he needed. "It's not just about losing a watch," I said finally, my voice calm but firm. "It's about respect for your family, for the people who trusted you, for your father's memory. Actions like this leave marks that take time to heal." A silence followed, but it was a productive one. Ryan nodded to each of us. He said, "I know. I understand now. I'll do better." The next morning, a few neighbors came by. They'd heard of the watch from Elaine and wanted to offer support. It wasn't gossip, it was concern. They shared stories of their own children's mistakes, their own lessons learned. And for the first time, I realized that this small betrayal, while painful, had created an unexpected circle of accountability. Even Ryan's friends got involved. They were gentle but direct. "Man, that was a bad call, but owning it, that's huge. You gotta be straight with your mom from now on." And Ryan was. By the end of the week, the incident, though embarrassing, had transformed into a quiet lesson that spread through our community. Honesty, even after a mistake, carries far more weight than any short-term gain. People respected him, not for the error, but for facing it. At work, Ryan's part-time manager mentioned he had been more responsible than ever, showing up early, staying late, even helping coworkers. I noticed these little changes at home, too. He washed dishes without reminders, helped with laundry, and most importantly, approached me with renewed sincerity. The watch, returned and resting safely in my bedroom drawer, became more than a memory of Mark. It was a symbol of accountability, of consequences that carry weight beyond the home, and of lessons learned the hard way. Even with the truth out in the open, I refused to let this story be about shame or embarrassment. My goal was dignity for Ryan, for myself, for the family we were rebuilding. He had faced the moral consequences publicly, yet I emphasized compassion, guidance, and reflection, not ridicule. In a way, the small community had unwittingly contributed to his growth. Their awareness wasn't about punishing him, it was about showing him the social ripple effect of choices, and Ryan absorbed that lesson more than I could have imagined. That week, as I tucked him into bed after dinner, I noticed him tracing the watch with a finger, not touching it, just remembering. He sighed softly and said, "I'll never forget this, Mom. I really won't." And I believed him. Sometimes consequences aren't loud or dramatic. Sometimes they are quiet, real, and enduring, and that's what shapes a person more than fear ever could. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to a quiet rhythm, but it wasn't the same rhythm as before. It was steadier, more deliberate, like the steady tick of Mark's watch after a storm. Ryan approached the world differently now. He was still 22, still restless at times, still impulsive in little ways, but there was a thoughtfulness behind his actions I hadn't seen before. He started saving diligently, budgeting for things that mattered, and asking my opinion before making decisions that affected us both. The watch sat in my bedroom drawer, safe, untouched. Sometimes I would take it out and hold it, tracing the engraving with my fingers. Time is the only thing we never get back. Use it well. The words were heavier now, layered with loss. with mistakes, with redemption. But they were also lighter because I could see that Ryan had learned them, truly. One Sunday afternoon, we sat on the porch together, watching the sunlight spill across the yard. Ryan brought his journal with him and scribbled quietly while I sipped my tea, listening to the soft wind rustling through the maple leaves. "You know, Mom," he said finally, not looking up, "I keep thinking about Dad's watch, about selling it, and I don't know how to say it, but I want to make it right, every day." I looked at him, my heart swelling. This was my son, the same boy who had betrayed trust, but now standing in front of me with honesty, humility, and a willingness to change. "You're making it right by living differently, Ryan," I said softly, "by remembering what matters, by choosing integrity even when it's hard. That's how you honor your father and yourself." He nodded, his hands still in his lap, fingers tracing the worn edges of his notebook. The house smelled faintly of vanilla from the candle I had lit, mingling with the earthy scent of spring rain that had just passed. The ordinary details of life, tea, sunlight, rain, felt miraculous now, imbued with quiet gratitude. Over the next month, Ryan made small gestures of accountability. He helped his younger cousins with homework, volunteered at the local community center on weekends, and checked in with me each day about his expenses and plans. I watched him, sometimes silently, as he learned that life wasn't just about immediate gratification, that actions have consequences, not just within our home, but beyond it. He began to understand responsibility in a way I hadn't expected. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. One evening, he approached me with a small box in his hands. "Mom," he said, voice steady, "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to give you this." Inside the box was a small notebook. On the first page, he had written, "Lessons from a mistake." Inside, he chronicled everything he had learned about honesty, trust, integrity, and respect for family. Every memory of the watch, every pang of regret, every decision to be better. Tears welled in my eyes as I hugged him tightly. "You've grown so much. I'm proud of you." He hugged me back, firmly, and for the first time in weeks, the weight between us seemed lighter. I realized then that healing isn't a single moment. It's a series of small steps taken every day. It's a trust rebuilt, slowly, brick by brick. And sometimes it comes from letting go of anger, not because the betrayal didn't hurt, but because forgiveness allows the heart to breathe again. We didn't pretend the mistake hadn't happened. Ryan knew the pain he caused, and he carried it with him. But he also carried the understanding of what it meant to repair that pain. In the evenings now, when I hear Ryan laughing with friends on the porch, or see him carefully tending the small garden we planted together, I feel a quiet reassurance. Life doesn't undo mistakes, but it gives us the chance to learn from them, to grow, and to honor those we love. Mark's watch remains in the drawer. Occasionally, Ryan asks to hold it, and I let him, reminding him that memory and respect are far more precious than silver and leather. The house feels peaceful again. Not perfect, not untouched by human error, but alive, warm, and full of lessons learned the hard way. And I know, deep in my heart, that Ryan has become a man capable of honoring those he loves and of making choices that reflect the kind of person he wants to be. Now, sitting here in the quiet of the evening, I often find myself thinking about that watch. Not the silver or the leather, but the meaning it carried, the promises, the memories, the weight of a father's love, and yes, the betrayal that almost broke us. I've learned that mistakes don't define a person, but how they respond to them does. Ryan's choice to sell the watch was wrong. It was impulsive, selfish, and hurtful. But the way he faced the consequences, honestly, openly, and with real effort to make amends, showed me the depth of his character. Sometimes I wonder how many of us truly understand the difference between mistakes we make and the responsibility we hold for them. It's not just about avoiding error, it's about owning it, learning from it, and using it as a bridge to grow closer to the people who trust us most. In our home, trust is no longer taken for granted. It's earned daily, gently, deliberately. And Ryan has shown me that a young person, even after a serious misstep, can choose to step back onto the path of integrity, humility, and care. I think about Mark often. I imagine him smiling quietly, proud of his son, knowing that he passed down not only a watch, but the lessons of patience, honor, and the value of time. The watch is no longer a symbol of loss. It has become a symbol of growth. We all have moments when we falter, when desire and impulse outweigh wisdom. But those moments don't have to define us. It's what comes after, the courage to face the truth, the willingness to accept consequences, the effort to rebuild that shapes who we are. To all the parents, all the children, and everyone watching this story, I want you to consider this. Are you holding on to the lessons from those you love? Are you making choices that honor the people who trusted you? And if you falter, will you face it honestly, with humility and a willingness to grow? Ryan has reminded me that even after disappointments, love can endure, forgiveness can heal, and the bonds that hold a family together, though sometimes tested, can become stronger than ever if we approach them with honesty, patience, and care. As I close this story, I want you to reflect on your own life. Have you ever faced a moment when you or someone you love made a choice that hurt someone else? How did you respond? Did it teach you something lasting? Stories like ours exist in every home, in every family. They're quiet lessons, sometimes painful, sometimes difficult to witness, but always, always a chance to learn, to grow, and to find understanding. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone you love, take a moment to hold them close today. And if you want more stories of real families, real mistakes, and the lessons they teach, please subscribe, leave a comment, or share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because in the end, stories like these aren't just about mistakes. They're about growth, about trust, and about the enduring power of love. And my hope, as I share ours, is that it might inspire you to reflect, to forgive, and to act with integrity in the moments that truly matter.